So, welcome everybody to my Senior to Seniors podcast. And Michael, I tried to find music as the intro that might work well for your book when it's turned into a movie. Uh, so I kind of thought, well, what would the music be like, for the intro to your movie? And so,
That's pretty good.
well, you
That's
got to
pretty
start
good.
thinking about that stuff, right? Um,
Everyone says it would make a great movie, at least a Netflix original series or something like
yeah,
that. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let me introduce you properly, Michael. We're going to in Seniors to Seniors, we try to explore the vibrant journeys of those who have embraced new chapters in their life, like Michael has. And today, I'm thrilled to introduce a remarkable guest, really, who exemplifies a spirit of reinvention, and that's Michael Wendroff. Michael is not only an accomplished author, but also a beacon of inspiration for anyone contemplating a second career. His debut thriller, What Goes Around, has been described as a relentless and gripping narrative that keeps readers turning pages, all while tackling compelling societal issues. Born into a literary family, his mother, an editor, and his stepfather, a literary agent, Michael was immersed in the world of storytelling from an early age after a successful marketing career and even being inducted into New York University's Hall of Fame. He courageously pivoted to fulfill his lifelong dream of writing a novel during the pandemic. Michael, I'm so pleased to have you here, and I hope I adequately described you in the introduction. So, welcome.
Thank you. More than adequate. That was a great intro. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Well, and I appreciate you being here. So I have so many notes all over my desk and so many questions and highlights and all kinds of things. So I love your story. And in preparing to talk to you, I've listened to other podcasts that you've been on and or talked about, and they are plentiful. And so your book has stirred a lot of interest and become a bestseller. So talk a little bit about your family, because I think that's important for all of us, but especially for you. And by the way, everybody, don't feel sorry for Michael at all. He's coming to us from northern Italy today because it got a little too warm in Florida for him in the summer. I'm in Dallas, Texas, so I have no sympathy for him. Yeah,
Sorry about that.
he's in northern Italy today, where it's a little bit cooler in the summer. So, Michael, tell us about your family.
Well, I'll start with my mother because she was actually the impetus for my debut thriller, What Goes Around. Um, and it actually started the second I was born,
Yeah.
or so I'm told. I was put on her chest. She looked deeply into my eyes and she said, "Oh, how nice to see you again."
Mm,
And it was that again part that always intrigued me. And I always wanted to do something with that. I always wanted to write. It took me quite a while before I wrote my book, but that was the start. And my mother actually had been an editor back in the day at publishing firms in New York City. And in
mhm.
fact, I distinctly remember her on weekends sitting on the couch, these manuscript pages strewn about, red pen in hand, marking up all of those pages. So I guess I should have been prepared for when I got my editor's comments. Now, they weren't in red pen anymore, but those notations and the margins of the Word document were just as tough, I guess.
A little
But
punishing.
at least I knew that was the norm.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, in terms of the rest of my publishing family, so my mother married a literary agent, and literary agents are really the go-betweens between authors and traditional publishing houses. Publishing house will not look at someone's manuscript unless it comes through an agent. So he was an agent. My mother remarried an agent, Henry Morrison, and he had a lot of good thriller and mystery clients. And so I started reading those books. I got them all for free. And, that got me into that genre. And I kind of, saw what was selling, even starting at a young age, and knew what I liked. So I tried to incorporate that into my writing, many years later. He had very good clients. Robert Ludlum was one of them. Robert Ludlum was a best-selling author. A lot of people know him from his Born Identity movies with Matt Damon.
Sure.
And I remember when I was young, and we were over at his winter home. He's from New Jersey originally, but he had a home of the winter in the Caribbean in St. Thomas. And we were there, and I got up early one morning, and I saw he was sitting on his couch. He had a yellow legal pad in his lap. He had a Dixon Ticonderoga #2 pencil, and he was writing out his novel. And that's how he wrote his best-selling novels, by hand, 450-page novels. I tell you, I admired Ludlum's plotting and his prose, but I did not want to have to write out a novel. Thank God when it came time for me to do mine, there were PCs, and that's how I wrote it.
Yeah. Can you imagine, and even your mother, because she dealt with the same things, and I'm guessing most of her career was pre-internet, right? So
Of
everything,
course, yeah.
yeah, everything was yellow, the yellow legal pads that, you would script in a movie, right? It's kind of what, you would start a scene with your mother sitting on the couch,
There you
going
go.
through that whole thing. Um, so was this book, was this your very first effort into writing a novel?
It is my debut novel, my debut thriller, and I'd always wanted to write a novel starting young, and from reading books, and I could always, writing came pretty easily to me, but it was of course more business writing or letter writing. Um, and I was interested in writing because, but then school and business got in the way. You mentioned that I went to NYU,
Yeah.
and for my I was studying marketing, and for my MBA thesis, I wrote a document titled "Marketing in the Publishing Industry." So at that point, I was marrying kind of two loves: my original love of books and publishing, and my new love of marketing. And I met with a lot of interesting folks. One who I interviewed was the editor-in-chief at Simon and Schuster, a guy by the name of Michael Korda. And I remember waiting outside his office, and it was way beyond the time for my interview. And I'm waiting, and then finally he opens the door and he, tells me to come on in and let me introduce you to someone. And he says, Michael, this is Truman Capote. And there, talk about thrillers in cold blood.
Yeah.
And Truman Capote just looked just like you'd imagine, the big white suit and the Pandora hat and all of that.
And
And
sounded
it was
like only Truman Capote could sound, right?
exactly. It really did. You know that voice. So that was a lot of fun. And then, the publishing industry has a trade journal called Publishers Weekly. And they got wind that I was going around interviewing all these people about this topic. And they contacted me, and they actually ended up excerpting my MBA thesis in three of the editions of their magazine, and they actually paid me for that. So I got paid to write my thesis, and that was the first time, of course, that I got paid for writing, and I like that.
Well, and it's funny because, let's see, athletes in college would be considered professionals if they got paid. You actually were being paid. You were a professional who wrote you had an unfair advantage. There's no doubt about it, right?
Yeah, for sure, for
Um,
sure. It was pretty
well,
wild times.
yeah. Well, one of the things that in one of your podcasts you talked about, and I think it's important here because I'm talking and we're talking to a lot of seniors, and
Right.
there aren't very many people that I know that have said they never thought about writing a book. Most people have thought about writing a book, but they're not in a position many times. A lot of people don't think they can, they don't think they're good enough, uh, or they simply don't have the time. And you were, you had your MBA, you were a business consultant, you were tied up with other stuff. You were a busy guy. And it sounds like maybe COVID gave you an open opportunity to take this chance to start putting words on papers. Is that right?
Yeah, and that is right. And, I had, it was right around the same time that I turned 60.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking to myself, oh God, I've always wanted to do this thing, to write this novel. Is this ever going to happen? But of course, you're always busy when you're working and,
Sure.
family as well. And it really was the pandemic where, there was that point with COVID when you couldn't do anything. In my town, you couldn't even go to the beach.
Yeah.
So I guess I had no more excuses. So
Yeah.
I sat down and I wrote that novel. And it was a lot of fun. And, what the way I went about it was I first decided I've got to plot this thing out. And it does deal with some contemporary topics, some tough ones, such
Sure.
as some of these crazy groups out there of supremacists and boogaloo boys and incels and
Yeah,
all
and
that.
Charlottesville was a big part of, you know,
That was a inspiration in terms of, when that happened. I mean, obviously, it's so disturbing, and
yeah,
I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on. How did these people get into this? So I did a lot of research for it, and I wanted it in my novel both to be contemporary and deal with some tougher issues. But I myself was just very curious as to what could happen, and I tried to kind of depict what might happen to a naive young teenager. But so the plotting, which that was part of it, is my first step in writing. And there's actually two kinds of writers. There's writers who are called um, plotters. Those are the ones that, as I am, that ideate first, think up the whole story. I want to know, what my twist ending is going to be. I want to know where I'm going to plant the red herrings and all that. And then there's the other type of writer, which is a pantser. So they write by the seat of their pants. They basically have no idea where the story's going, and somehow they're able to write it. And one way is not better than the other. It depends on what's good for you. I mean, bestsellers come out of both versions, but
sure.
I'm diff.
And musicians are pantsers, right? I mean, it's, they sit and they wait for most of the time. I'm sure they're inspired, in plotters and they plot the whole song and so forth. But many are guided by inspiration, right?
I think that's a good analogy. And I tell you though that even though I'm a plotter, it doesn't mean that things won't evolve because they
Yeah.
do. I mean, sometimes the characters talk to you, and am I crazy? Well, maybe a little bit. But, I remember there was this time where, my plot called for this character to be killed off. And I had grown to really like this character. And I just couldn't do it. So I had to change the plot. But there was actually another time where a similar situation, and I got to really like this other character. And this time I did kill the character off. And the whole next week, I'm depressed, and my wife's yelling at me, "What's wrong with you? They're not real. They're not real." But I guess, to a writer, they
Totally
kind of are
absorbed.
real.
You're absorbed in the whole story.
You
Um,
spend a lot of time with them, yeah.
and they talk about actors that take on the characteristics of the person that they're studying, that they're going to, the part that they're going to play. And so you were actually caught up the entire time, being thinking like that character. Um, uh, yeah,
You're right. That's a good way to describe it for sure. You're
yeah,
100% right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me, so for those seniors that have thought about writing a book, maybe now is your time. Maybe now is the time that you can do it because, like Michael, um, while we don't have COVID, you have perhaps you have time, and you're looking. Many seniors are looking for purpose, and this might be a direction that a senior could go.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably three key things that are important for, seniors, retirees to do. And the first I would say is continue your social life. So continue to be friends to the degree you could with the people that either you'd worked with or you neighbors you knew well. Um, you can socialize perhaps with people you knew in the past. Check out Facebook. I actually reconnected with a bunch of people I knew in high school, and the other thing is in socializing is then to reach out to new people. Now, for me, in one way, I was very lucky because right around my retirement, I'd moved to Florida and I moved to a relatively new community in Florida, and there everyone had the same objective, which was to meet new people. So for me, I probably ended up all of a sudden having 30 new friends and really nice people I would say are friends, which is more than I'd probably had in the prior 30 years when I lived in
Hmm.
Connecticut.
Hmm.
So, so you can meet new people that way, but if you're not moving, you can join other organizations. It actually ties to the second thing that really I think is important for seniors, which is, to always be learning. So, you can learn how to about a book. I'll talk more about that. But you could, learn to play pickleball or learn to play poker or go to learn a new language. Or, the continuing ed schools have so many different courses you can take. So, and you'll meet new people, and there goes the socialization cycle as well through that. And the other thing that, I I've done and others I know have done to keep active and keep having fun in life is to give back. So for example, you could be in Big Brothers Big Sisters. There's plenty of kids out there that could use some good guidance. Um, you could um, well, another thing you do is actually something my wife's doing now, and she's working with SCORE, volunteering with SCORE,
Sure.
which is
Uh-huh.
the Society of Retired
Business.
Executives, and she's helping people that don't have much of a business background because she also has a business background like I do.
Hmm.
So there's a lot to do, and for those people who are would-be writers, there's a lot you can do to get that going. I mean, I would say that. If you can find another group of writers nearby that you can, or would be writers, a writers group that you could bounce your work off of and get feedback. It's not a mandatory, but that's something nice. The other thing you can do is look online because, there's a lot of courses for writers. I actually took a few from, I think it was called BBC Maestro, and they had an online course from Harlan Coben, who's a well-known thriller writer, and from James Patterson, of course, is a
Yes.
king of novels,
Yeah.
um, and Lee Child as well. So I took those, and it was interesting because they don't always agree with each other. And I think that's a good thing. And again, you can find what you think works best for you. So those courses are out there so you can start to learn the craft of writing because I tell you, there really is a craft to writing. There's all
Oh,
sorts of things
sure.
you got to know, different perspectives, third person, first person, all sorts of crafty things that I wasn't totally aware of when I embarked on this, but I learned. And there's also conferences you can go to because, for example, I go to Thriller Fest, which is a big concert in New York, which is a big show in New York City, conference where the writers get together and they have learning sessions in them about all different aspects of writing, how to get through the muddle of the middle of your book, how to do this, how to do that, all sorts of stuff. So, take advantage of that if you really want to be a writer and start to do that. And once you get into it, I would say write every day, even if it's 10 minutes.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, if I would take 2 weeks off, I would just get out, be so out of it, and it'll take me a month to recover. But when you're there every day, continuously doing it, um, that would help a lot. And kind of on that note of how I did write, I mean, what I would do is I would start out just get the story out, get the words flowing. Don't worry how they sound, if they're the best words, certainly not spelling or grammar. Just get the story out on your PC. And then what I would do, let's say it's day two. So the next morning I would review what I had scribbled out the day before, and then I would try and make it into real writing. Make sure every word fits with the other words in the sentences in the paragraph. Add the metaphors and similes and all of that writing stuff. And when I'm done with that, then I just scribble out the next part of the story, and I would do that day after day, scribble out, refine, until finally I can write my two favorite words, which are the end.
At the end. Yeah. Yeah. And quite a journey. When you write, and maybe novels are different. I wrote a book in 2019 that I published about, it's a memoir about an experience that our family went through with my son. So I hired a writing coach, and there's writing coaches available. Uh,
That's right.
and that can help you. There are courses at community colleges,
Yep.
people that will help you. And I think what I'll do, I hadn't thought about till you mentioned, Michael. Thank you for mentioning it. I'll put in my show notes some writer groups that people can connect with, maybe even some Facebook groups that can
Hmm.
people can get on. And there's
Yeah.
paid and there's free things. But I remember when I wrote mine, Michael, and I want to ask you about the steps that you took. But when I did my book, I started thinking that, well, okay, here is a preface. All right, we got the preface. Here's chapter one, wrote chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. And I thought, I think I need some help. So I hired the writing coach, and I went to her house, and I handed her what I had written. And she looked at it, didn't spend a lot of time on it, Michael, just a couple minutes. And she said, well, come with me. We walked to the front of her house where she had her trash bins, and she took what I had written and threw it in the trash bin. And she said, we're going to start over. And I want you to take a different approach. And I said, well, these are my words. How could you have done that? Those are my words. And she
Yeah.
said, those words don't matter. What I want you to do in her style was to write out thoughts, um, just write out notes. And then she said, we'll put it together at another time. We'll be able to take all the scenes that you have written, all the thoughts, and then we'll assemble them at another time. So when you did yours, I know you do an outline, you have steps that you take, but do you do chapter one, do you follow a progression? How exactly do you do it, Michael?
Yeah, I usually, so I'll start, with the big picture when I'm writing out my outline. And then I will start with what could be a subplot. I will also start with who are my characters, and I try and develop my own little character sketch of them and what makes them unique and how they might sound different from each other. Um, and then and then I will start to sketch out what could be chapter one or scene one or
All right. Mhm.
and so on and so forth. And but that more, minute detail, that stuff really changes a lot over time. And a lot happens in the edits. And for me, at least with a traditional publishing house like Bloomsbury that I'm with, I didn't quite appreciate how many different editors there are, even though my mother was an editor, but that was back when I was quite young. And what I found out was that there's a lot of different types of editors. I mean, the first one is more of what I call a strategic editor. So that's the one that buys your book and may make overall um, directional suggestions, like, maybe you need a prologue, or maybe you need more action in the middle, more general stuff. And then there's a line editor, and the line editor does exactly what you think the line editor does, which is go through every single line and make sure that it's as good as can be. And then after that is the copy editor. And the copy editor's job is to make sure that, for example, you didn't say she has green eyes in chapter 2 and brown eyes in chapter 8, and they check all your facts if you're dealing with guns or whatever, and they'll check all your dates to make sure you have the right sequence, all that stuff. And then after that comes the proofreader. And all these different editors, they actually want the other person's job, the higher up one. So they're doing as much as they can to show their value.
Yeah,
And each time I'm going through this with one of these editors, I've got to go through my entire book.
sure.
Well, finally, my publisher says, "Okay, Michael, the hardcover edition of What Goes Around, the type has been set, and now you have to read it again." I can't tell you how many times I read my book. It's a good thing I liked it.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. So in one of your podcasts, you talked about, the journey, the overall journey of writing this book was about 10 years, I think is what you said, where maybe the thought came into your head and you thought about it, but the actual writing took about 2 years. Is that correct?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
did things flow for you pretty well when you started? Did you have a? I know there's some writers that I am going to write 1,000 words a day no matter what, right? Or 500 words a day. Did you take that approach?
For me, I love the writing itself. And, trying to figure out, the metaphors and trying to figure out maybe a little alliteration, all that stuff. I love the actual writing. The harder part for me is at first coming up with the story and one that could have twists and turns.
Uh-huh.
And I'll do also a lot of research. Now that I'm right now, there's Chat GPT, which for research is pretty efficient. You got to double check it. It's AI, but uh, back when I wrote What Goes Around, I just had a lot of Googling, which took a lot of time. But the thing when it comes to research that I found is really important is talking to the people that actually do the kind of jobs in the book you're writing. For example, I spoke to FBI agents. I spoke to the chief of police in my town. I spoke to detectives. There was actually a female detective I spoke to, which was very important for my book since I have a female detective in it.
Mhm.
And she was great. She gave me a lot of insights and anecdotes, which made their way into the book. So, it's important to get, that genuine information from the people one on one. Now, I don't think I spoke to any serial killers. Who knows?
Yeah. So you didn't go to any prisons or talk to anybody like that, huh?
I didn't do that. And, sometimes people will wonder if I went to any of these horrible rallies, like, with these crazy groups, which unfortunately are true, incels, boogaloo boys, who knew these things existed? So a lot of times people wonder about that, but I didn't quite have the guts to do that. I did read a lot of books by people who interacted directly with them. I actually know a professor out of New York who wrote a book on supremacists and actually was there with them. So had a number of deep conversations with him, but I didn't actually go myself.
Michael, do you find that in your book you were able to tackle societal issues uh, in a way where you were able to express your feelings but you were able to do it anonymously, so to speak, right? Because so
Well,
many
those,
are scared to say, especially right now with what's going on. And of course, we're doing this in late September of 2025. And there's a lot of things happening where, the president has just named Antifa as a terrorist organization. And of course, there was an assassination. There's a lot going on right now. So, did you find you were able to make some statements through your book, through you, but not through you, so you wouldn't be judged as a whatever term might be connected to you?
yeah, I mean, all of those scenes, those are the toughest ones for me to write. And because, there was the battle. You want them to come across as very genuine, as the real thing, as what, certain people and groups might be saying and thinking. So you want it to come off that as real, but at the same time, you don't want to be painted with the negative brush. And I do hope that, the positive messages, which, really are at the core of that twist ending. You hope that they really get through and that people, not only appreciate the fact that it's a real page turner, but appreciate the fact that at the end of the book, they are left with something really to think about.
So while you were writing, Michael, did you doubt yourself? Did you have doubts about, this is my first book. Am I really up to it? And how did you deal with your own self beliefs and so forth? Your mindset. What kind of mindset do you have to be the kind of writer that you are?
I think, that's probably true of a lot of seniors who are, dealing, with younger people and technology or just trying to get into something new, and they probably do have a lot of self-doubts, and I had some. But you basically have to step back and say, okay, I'm not experienced as a thriller novel writer, but I do have, experience in writing in general, as well as I have experience in organizational skills, experience in understanding people, motivating people. You got to, really um, go in depth on all of the things that you really do have in you from your years and years of life. And that's what I tried to do. And the fact that I just loved being able to sit there and write helped a lot. And I'd go ahead and reread what I'd done the day before, and I'd often be very happily surprised.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so yeah, it was going good. And when I'm writing, I do have, a certain way that I like to write that keeps me interested, and I think would keep is what also keeps the readers interested, which is I like to write in very short chapters. So the reader really feels like they're progressing and things are moving. I
right.
like to end each chapter with a cliffhanger, and it could be a physical cliffhanger, or it could be an emotional one, or a psychological one. And then the third thing I like to do when I'm writing is to start that very next chapter with a very intriguing line, so that the reader wants to keep going. And that's why I think so many of the reviews have said that, yeah, it's kept me up all night. It was a real page turner, that type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. You're the kind of author that I despise because I can't go to bed. Right.
Right.
It's like, why is this book so good? I can't put it down. And my wife is laying beside me saying, "Will you turn the lights off, or are you going to go to bed at any time soon?" So, what was the hardest part of your journey? You've had several journeys in your life, right? I mean,
Uh,
you had a real job for years. And I don't mean any disrespect to being an author, but
right, right, right.
yeah, he had a real job for a number of years, and so it's been quite a journey. And that itch to write, especially with your family background, had to be something that you had to feed at some time. You just had to do it at some time. What was the hardest part of this journey for you?
It's interesting because, even though I've got a marketing background, um, that's been a bit of a challenge because, right now with traditional publishers, big publishers, they don't do a ton for their authors. And to be an author today, your job is really 50% writing and 50% selling, 50%
Yeah,
marketing.
yeah,
Um, so y- you got to really, and that's another piece of advice I would give to would-be writers is to, start making sure you're on social media, and you don't have to be everywhere, but, Facebook is a good place to start, or
uh-huh,
Instagram. So, start to get into that, start to, try and develop lists of friends so you'll have an audience on those social media sites. Um, Start to really understand that you're going to have to be out there as an author to sell yourself, whether it's podcasts
mhm,
or even in, local book fairs or bookstore events. I've actually, I do have an advantage at some of those things versus um, other authors, because most authors tend to be introverted.
yeah,
But when I'm at these bookstores or book fairs with my book, there are other authors at tables next to me, and they'll be sitting on their chair behind the table, waiting for someone to come up to them and talk to them. But I'm standing up, I'm out front, I'm giving them my spiel right away, and I always sell out, but that as a would-be author, you got to start preparing yourself to be out there a little bit more. And a lot of times, it's difficult for introverts, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes and the better you are at it.
yeah. And for seniors listening to this, if you decide that you want to tackle writing a book, of course, you can self-publish. There's ways to do it. You don't have to have an agent. You don't have to be writing for it to be a bestseller. When I wrote mine was just to be able to advance a cause that I believed in and still believe in to this day. And it was never about being a bestseller, or it would have been wonderful, but I had a job like you did, that I had to do different things at different times, find time to write when I wasn't teaching and coaching and so forth. And so it can be done. And seniors are fortunate that they already have a group of other seniors who will help them, I believe, will help them advance what they're trying to do. Because as I said, I know most people wish that they had written a book or could write a book. I don't know if that's a deathbed regret, but I know a lot of people think about that. So I wouldn't stop trying to do that and find your group and
Yeah,
connect with your group, right?
you make a good point about the self-publishing because these days, yeah, you could self-publish. And publishers don't know everything, and there's plenty of books that were self-published that actually did become bestsellers, although that doesn't have to be your goal, as you said.
Right.
Um, the only thing I would say is if you are going to self-publish, just make sure, like you did, that you get a writing coach, that you hire a freelance editor, because you still want to, put out the best product possible out there.
Okay.
But yeah, self-publishing is a great thing that's come out, that's opened the doors for so many people to be have a very satisfying experience.
Yeah. So we didn't talk about this, but the cover of your book, and I've got part of it behind me. So when people go to the bookstore, at least they'll know the colors. And I'm sorry I don't have the whole book in front of me, but
Mhm.
they'll have an idea. Tell me about the cover, and uh, how much did you have to do with the cover, or how much did your publisher have to do with the cover?
Well, that was interesting, and this is true of both the cover and the name of my book, where I got to give a lot of credit to my publisher. Now, normally I'd worked in marketing advertising, and the usual case would be when an ad agency would come to me to review potential, TV ads. They'd show me, four or five, and I usually they wouldn't hit it the first go round, so I give them some feedback, and they come back with others later. But when the publisher showed me this cover, and it was just one cover, but that's what they showed me, I loved it. It was very different from my usual experience with creatives, where I said that is it, and it's I love the fact that it looked like a thriller. It had kind of thriller cover colors with that red and the black. And I went and I put it on a shelf, and I had it on my iPad before it was published, and went to the bookstore and put it on the shelf next to other books and other thrillers, and it popped out wonderfully. It was
Uh-huh.
very impactful, and it kind of has a circular feel to it when you see the whole thing, which ties into one of the themes of the book, which is really about there are things in people that transcend time, and unbreakable bonds, that really unbreakable bonds that transcend time. But that all worked together beautifully. And they also came up with the name. I had first submitted the name Perennial. If you read the book, you'll know where that comes from. But they said, well, that doesn't sound so much like a thriller. We thought about the perennial plan, perennial plot. But then they came up with What Goes Around, which is the perfect name for me because, first of all, people know the expression, what goes around comes around. So when they see that what goes around, they're making that connection in their own brains.
Sure.
And so I'm already making a connection with the reader when they just look at the title, and it fits the book. It ties into everything that the book's about.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful cover, and the title is great as well. And I'm happy for you that that it was what they came up with, what you could agree with. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
because I know there are some creators that create something and then it's all changed when they go to the people that are in the know, right? And so
true,
I'm so happy.
true.
Okay, so people got to grab your book. It's available, of course, on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's all the places and all of that stuff. So you got to go grab the book if you like thrillers. Now, I live in a Dell Web community of all old people like me, all retirees, right? And so, and usually, if I go outside to let the dog out or something at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, this place is dark. So here's the deal: I'm going to know whether people in my neighborhood bought your book because their lights are going to be on at midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going
It's
to
funny.
know. Yeah,
That's
I'm going to
funny.
know.
And I would say that the hardcover has been through a number of editions. The paperback version comes out the second week in October. It's also available now in an ebook, and it's also available in an audiobook. Audiobooks have in the market taken off a bit. I think it's easy
Yeah,
for people in terms of time management. If they're doing chores around the house, they can listen to it, or if they're still driving places, they can listen to it. So it's an audiobook too, and it's been published in a lot of different languages. And I'm happy since I'm in Italy now. It was published in Italian. I like the Italian cover of it as well. But
yeah.
yeah, it's
So I'm sure the Italians recognize you on the streets and gather in circles to hug you, kiss you. But probably hasn't happened yet, but it will. So when is your book going to be turned into a movie?
oh man, we have our feelers out. That would be great. I mean, everyone says the way it's set up, with these two detectives on the chase and into these secret worlds, and then that big twist. Everyone says great Netflix or Amazon original movie. I'll take the big screen too, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And so does your literary agent handle that as well, or do you have another?
Yes.
Okay, so
Well,
so
my agent works with a Hollywood agent, so they're in tandem
okay,
when it
so
comes to movies. Yeah,
you get the biggest bang for the buck really with somebody like that has a network, and
for
so
sure.
a network is really important. So you got your feelers out, and it
Oh
could
yeah.
happen. and I think we'll all be looking for it. So tell me, as I always ask my guest, what's one question I didn't ask that I should have asked, but I didn't? What is there one thing that I didn't ask you that you wish that I would have?
I'd say maybe the question of, are you writing a second book?
Oh, well, there you go. So tell us about your second book.
So, of course, it's going to be a thriller because I believe that, authors to some degree should be like brands where, someone who goes to buy a book by the same author will get the same type of book,
Yeah,
thriller,
yeah,
page-turning one. And it's kind of a prequel. It features the two main characters, the two detectives who are from What Goes Around. So they'll be in it too because when readers also develop a bit of a bond with characters, if they like
sure.
these characters or find them interesting,
Yeah.
they like more of them. Kind of like Jack Reacher has been through 30 books now, so I'm gonna have
Mhm.
my two characters in for book number two.
Yeah, and you know exactly what you're going to get, when you watch those
Yes,
movies.
that's
And
right.
well, I'm glad you didn't kill off, those people, those
Right.
people, right? Because you wouldn't be able to use them. And so I'm looking forward to that, Michael. Tell us, how can people get a hold of you? Do you do speaking? Do you do go around the country? What are you doing?
I I've done a lot of speaking at bookstore events as well as other community type events. I am available if anyone wants me to come talk either in person or via Zoom at their own book club. I've done that, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I find it fascinating the type of insights my readers come up with, which is great. Then
yeah.
I take credit for them. But the other way is they could reach me on my website, michaelwendroff.com, and I have a contact me, and I get the emails right from there, and I always answer the email. So even if you have, a question about writing or how to get started or anything like that, I'd be happy to hear from you and help you out.
Well, yeah, we want you to spend some quality time with people when you're in Italy and not just, enjoying the beautiful Italy countryside. You're also, Michael, for people, you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. So listen, there should be no reason that people can't find you if they decide that that's, what they want to do and reach out to you. And
Very
so,
true.
Michael Wendroff, this has been a real pleasure in talking to you. I want to thank you for being here today, and I hope we get to
Thank you.
talk.
This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a great day, and everybody, thank you so much. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure that you subscribe on YouTube or like me or do whatever that you can so we can push the podcast forward. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.